Says recording.
Okay, so this would be part 5, hopefully the last one. And as far as the Vietnam War, I'm going to give you some answers for this. I'm going to add a nice video that you're going to take 10 short video notes as you watch the Vietnam War video. I don't want to rush through this. Some of you have relatives that fought in it, and I'm going to give it the proper respect and not rush through it. So you're going to see a separate video on the Vietnam War to learn more about that, okay? But first of all, we sent weapons and money. Fill these in. Then we sent advisors. And then we send soldiers. Some people might say, why do you have 1955? Because that's when Americans started dying. Oh, but no, it officially started 1963, 1964. If you want to argue, yes, but if Americans start dying, many people say the war started in 1955, and then in 1973, okay? The Vietnam War, after kind of losing the war, it's still controversial. Some people say it was the first war we've ever lost. Other people say, no, we didn't lose. We left there and we weren't losing. But the fact is, we fought there because we did not want North Vietnamese communists to come down into South Vietnam. After we left, South Vietnamese became communists. So that's why some people say it was our first loss. After losing, quote unquote, the Vietnam War, we started to question our role as the world's police officer. Should we go around the world trying to do all this and that? Okay, so we started maybe pulling back a little bit. Also, the Vietnam War showed that public opinion can really affect people's feeling about war. Public opinion can make it where we decided to get out of there. People were protesting against the war. People were burning their draft cards. A lot of people were against the war. So public opinion made a huge difference in the Vietnam War. Okay? So that's what we're going to have for the Vietnam War. Like I said, you're going to learn a lot more about it when you watch the video. Now let's go to détente and glasnost. Détente means a easing of tensions or a thawing of tension. So put that for the times 3. Détente means an easing of hostilities or tensions. So instead of this, Cold War, détente. Oh, okay, let's back off. Let's relax a little bit. This is détente in the 70s. And glasnost, which is more of an openness for the Soviet society, and openness and honesty started. Put openness above glasnost. That's what that means. And SALT is a good example of détente. Richard Nixon signed a Strategic Arms Limitations Treaty. Write that down, Strategic Arms Limitation Treaty. You need that for the exam. With the Soviet Union. Instead of having 10,000 nuclear weapons, let's make it where we have limitations on our nuclear weapons. So for President Nixon now to go over and shake the hands of Brezhnev, who was the leader of the Soviet Union, that was a good example of trying to ease the tensions. Nixon also went to China and recognized Chairman Mao in China. He walked on the Great Wall. It was a big deal. Why did he go? Because he wanted to ease the tensions in the Cold War, have some détente with China. We want to start trading with them. Let's not have such a Cold War. Let's thaw it a little bit. Let's put a little warmth into this Cold War. That's what détente means. And Jasmine, you have a little something to talk about with that also, right? I'm proud to say that Jasmine was part of Glasnost in 1990, right, Jazz?
1990, yeah. I guess.
Yeah.
So I was, I guess my story is that I was going to Parsons School of Design as a photography major, and they had the first of its kind ever exchange with the Soviet Union. And
what year was this?
I think it was 1990, 91.
1990, 91, yeah. Right before the collapse of the Soviet Union and the Berlin Wall coming down.
Yeah, Gorbachev was in power. And
the leader of the Soviet Union, Gorbachev, good.
And Nikon sponsored the whole thing. They chose about 10, well, maybe 12 of us from Parsons School of Design and the photography department, and we went there as a group, and Nikon sponsored. They gave us each $4,500 worth, at that time was a lot, of Nikon F4 equipment, and they had a rep come over with us, and we went, and they put us in these dormitories in Moscow.
So this is the Americans going to Soviet Union,
Yes.
and Soviets came to America, right?
Well, first we went, and what was interesting is they told us to bring cigarette packets because it was much more. It was worth a lot more than rubles and everything, and they gave us $20 worth of rubles, which was,
And the rubles are the Soviet currency.
Yes, there was almost they were so devalued. So for $20 for a week in Moscow, I was having caviar every day. I was able to go to the best hotel, the foreign people's hotel, and have dinner. I had anyway, and then to stop taxis, they wouldn't stop for me. Plus, I look Russian. They didn't stop for me, but when I held out Marlboro cigarettes, they stopped in a screeching halt, and that's how I paid. I had maybe a dozen packs of cigarettes, and that's how I paid for taxis and everything. They didn't care about money.
And didn't you say the Soviets would come up to you and beg you to not take off, but to trade, to give your Levi's jeans? Because in Soviet Union, jeans were illegal.
Yeah, I actually brought a couple of Levi's. That's the other thing they told us to bring was jeans, and so we gave that. Each of us was paired up with one person, with a student there. So I was paired up with a Russian man, a guy, actually, he was my age, very sweet. He took me to his family, and I have family in Russia on my mother's side, so I went to visit them, and the three of them were living in a studio apartment with a huge German Shepherd.
This is communism, guys.
Yes, they were living in these, what looks like public housing in America.
Projects. So almost everybody in the Soviet Union lived in projects.
Yes, and the whole family, they had one son, so they were given one room. And they had a curtain between his space because at this point, he was, I think, 18, 19.
Oh, my God.
And they were sleeping in the living room, and they had a separate kitchen. But they were the nicest. Everybody in Russia that I met was amazing. The other person that...
They weren't evil and nasty and the way we were being brainwashed and think the Russians people were.
Everybody was really wonderful. The guy that... I was paired up with introduced me to Dmitry Donskoy, which was the official photographer for Gorbachev. And so I spent a lot of time with Dmitry, and he gave me negatives of Gorbachev, which are somewhere which you might have thrown out when you cleared out the garage. But that's a very, very important thing I got as a gift from him. And I was invited to have dinners with them. Everybody was extremely hospitable. This was during the winter, so it was very dark and gloomy. I took a couple of pictures.
Look at this picture, guys. It's so great.
We don't have all the pictures I took, but a
Soviet soldier.
And this is another.
I love this
picture.
one.
People were so friendly.
So see the difference, guys? Instead of the Cold War, they're the enemy. They're the bad guys. They let Jasmine go over there and take pictures of them. They want to have glasnost. They want to have some détente, the thawing of the tension.
They do drink a lot of vodka. So I'm not a drinker. So basically, I was able to spend my time actually meeting people, but the rest of the people in my group, basically were drunk the entire time.
The Americans went over there.
They were really.
They were college students.
They were college students. They were basically doing college student things and drinking lots of vodka. But I don't drink, so I didn't. I had a really good experience. And then the ridiculous thing is that the Russians then sent them over to New York City.
Yes.
With also $20 for a week.
Now this is the difference between communism and capitalism.
So
your $20, you lived like a queen in Russia, in Soviet Union, Moscow.
Yes. I mean, we did stay in the dormitories, which were very sparse, very uncomfortable, very dark, very gloomy. The infrastructure.
But you could use $20 in American money to go eat like a queen for a whole week.
Yes, and just use the cigarettes to take taxis everywhere and give people cigarettes, because I also would give just single cigarettes to people. And
but then the Soviet guy comes and lives with your mom in Upper West Side of Manhattan.
They did. So the photographer, who's the head photographer who photographs the Soviet Olympics, he was their Olympic. He was their main sports photographer. He was the main Gorbachev photographer. Comes over to New York City for the first time, and I ended up having him sleep in my mother's studio. I grew up in a studio with my mother. And so he was sleeping over there, and nothing happened between them, although I kind of wished it would have.
You were trying to set them up? Your mom was available at the time?
He came over with vats of
Caviar?
The fish eggs. Oh my God, caviar.
Caviar.
So caviar costs nothing in Russia. Nothing. Like for 25 cents.
Yes.
Thing of
When I used to
caviar
tutor in New York City, I went over to a
is
Russian
crazy.
boy's apartment to tutor him, and the parents offered me caviar.
It cost nothing. So he came, and then the other boy that I was connected with, he stayed in the dormitories at Parsons. They did put the kids up in the dormitories, and he had $20. So basically, he ran through his $20 his first time going to have a sandwich and something. So by the
Oh my
first day,
God.
so we paid. So basically, what ended up happening is that each student that got taken care of by a student over there ended up paying for their student for the whole week.
Oh
So
my God.
I ended up, paying, I don't know, a few $100s for him. And at the time I didn't have money, but it was fine. He was a very nice guy.
That's great.
And we want to make sure that this was their first time out of the Soviet Union, that they have a really good experience. And they were blown away by America. They couldn't believe the freedom.
They probably
and
wanted to
everything.
stay here, right?
Yes, but they were not like, they weren't crazy like unhappy there. They love their families. They actually
Right.
enjoy their school. They're very proud of the school that they went
Right,
to.
right.
It wasn't like
Like some
and
prison.
they did not behave like that. They were
Right.
just happy to learn different things and
Different
and-
values, I guess. Here, very materialistic. I can't wait to get something else to
Yeah.
buy, material,
they're
material.
not they're in the Soviet Union at the time, and I don't know what it's like now because it's different, but they very focused on family and gatherings and eating together, and very simple. Every night we would be sitting around with lots of people.
Sounds kind of like when
eating.
you visited Italy.
Yeah, well, it was just freezing cold and gloomy, but the people were very, very nice.
Yeah,
And
yeah. Same here. Any Russian student I've ever had, not to stereotype, but they've been wonderful people, wonderful values, education, very important. It's great. All right, so I hope you guys got the idea as far as the economy, though. Your
The
$20
economy, yes.
really, really went a long way, which brings us to this, guys. Look. Berlin Wall falls, the USSR breaks up. Why? Basically because it was broke. The USSR's economy was in such bad shape. That's why it broke up, okay? So when the Berlin Wall, when those college students, when all those people started breaking up the Berlin Wall in Berlin, Soviet Union didn't really do anything about it because they couldn't afford to. So why? Put down this. Because the Soviet Union economy was in terrible shape. We talked about it before. When the economy is really bad, that's when usually things happen as far as revolutions or breakups, okay? If the government can't afford to fight back and say, no, don't break up this wall, that's when things change, okay? So the Cold War is over. Now with Putin, some people are saying maybe we have a Cold War part 2. I'll let you decide that. We can talk about that later. Maybe you can look into that. That might be a good essay if you ever want to write for extra credit. If anybody wants to bring up your grade, is the United States in a new Cold War Part 2 right now with Russia? If you want to write a little essay on that, I'll give you major bonus points. Okay, guys, it's always a pleasure. Hopefully, we'll see you for the next one. Remember, 10 notes for the next write that as number 19. Vietnam War video notes will be 19. Just put 10 short notes for that so I know that you watched it. And miss you guys. And thank you, Jasmine. As always, I love your stories. Makes it all so real. Want to say anything to my students?
bye, guys.
See you guys.